I've heard for a long time that visualization and mental training is a regular practice for some of the best performers in the world. Anything from Tony Robbins to Arnold Schwarzenegger to the best skaters and skiers in the world. But if you look into visualization, you don't have to look very far before you start kind of encountering some kind of weird stuff.
The universe is making things happen just for you.
At the third eye point.
Focus on the third eye.
In vibrational alignment.
And I've heard the success stories, but honestly, it just didn't feel very objective to me. Because I'm pretty sure for every success story, there's also someone who's envisioning the exact same thing, but is broke, sitting on their couch, eating Cheetos. So I decided to do a deep dive into this and see if I could kind of filter out the mumble jumble and see if there was science-based, objective truth. To answer the question, is this something that could improve my life? Specifically in learning new skills faster. The first place I started was with the scientific literature. Does visualization and mental practice actually help us learn faster? And if so, what's happening inside of our brain? Like, why? It doesn't really seem like this is something that the scientific community has a lot of controversy on. Like there are hundreds of studies documenting what happens and the results of doing this. I mean, dating back to like the 1800s. Like, this is not new. Like, a study like this is just absolutely fascinating, where you have this group of people that's trying to learn a new like motor movement with their hands, and like the mental practice group significantly outperforms the control group in both speed and accuracy in a very short amount of time. And there are tons of these studies. In fact, almost every study with this shows improvement from the ones that train mentally versus the ones that don't. Specifically in the area of speed and accuracy. Okay, so this is good. Like, I'd prefer to go off of something a little bit more concrete, like scientific studies, than I would someone's like personal testimony, right? Not saying that they're wrong, but I just prefer to go off of hard statistics. Now, I may be the only one here, but I really don't like doing new things unless I know, generally speaking, how and why they work. And this is where it gets really, really good, because mental practice and mental training and visualization taps directly into exactly what our brains do when we are learning a new skill. Most people don't know this, but when you're learning something new, around like 50 to 75% of the learning process is actually learning what not to do. I'll give you an example. Have you ever watched a toddler like try to feed themselves? It's kind of humorous, right? Like oftentimes the food ends up almost everywhere but where it's supposed to go. But see, what's actually going on here is the child is learning slowly which emotions to suppress and quiet so that the food ends up where it's supposed to go. They actually have too many connections inside of their brain. And in the exact same way, when you're learning how to drive for the first time, or perfect your golf swing, or learn a new language, or whatever the case may be, what you're really training your brain is you're teaching it what not to do. And over time, your brain gets faster and faster at suppressing the inappropriate actions that don't lead to the desired outcome. And if you've ever tried learning a new language, that you'll understand like just how much of a part of the learning process this suppression actually is. Because yeah, you're learning new things like what to say or how to enunciate something, but you're having to suppress your entire way of communicating that you've had for years upon years. For example, if I'm reading in Spanish and I come across a word like this, I have to suppress all of the English rules that I know that tell me to pronounce it like adios with a D sound. And instead, I have to activate all of the Spanish rules that I'm now learning, which says that the D between two vowels has more of a TH sound. So adios. So when you mentally train or practice something, you're simultaneously strengthening the connections that lead to the perfect swing or the correct pronunciation or whatever, while at the exact same time, you're teaching your brain which connections to turn down and to suppress that lead to the incorrect actions. And all of this happens because when you're practicing something inside of your mind, you can perform it perfectly every single time. And what's so cool is like literally, if you look at what the brain is doing, you can see that after mentally training, the brain has a heightened ability to suppress the incorrect actions. Like it's so cool. Okay, Cool. So we've established that mental training, visualization, whatever you want to call it, has concrete data supporting it, as well as how and why it works. But what about for you and I? Like, what if we want to build a mental practice to enhance our learning abilities? What specifically do we do or not do to have the most benefit possible? And it turns out there's actually a very, very specific protocol for this. But before we do that, I need to thank today's video sponsor, which is FlexiSpot, which is the maker of this desk, which is the Pro Plus Stand Desk E7. This thing can hold up to 355 pounds, has USB port, child lock, and it even has like anti-collision. So if you're going up and you hit something, it'll stop automatically. Hands down, the most important part of this desk for me is its stability, especially when it's fully extended. I mean, sure, it looks amazing, right? Like it's a beautiful desk. But for me, it's like, if I have thousands of dollars worth of equipment sitting on this desk, I need to know that it's not moving. It's not gonna be jiggling, shaking, nothing when I'm working on it. I mean, unless you like really throw your weight at this thing, it doesn't move. But if you're someone who constantly experiences, earthquakes and things like that, you can get their 4-legged standing desk, the E7Q, and that thing is rock solid. But for this desk, which is the E7, honestly, it's a game changer because it allows me to create a much more comfortable and productive work and study environment, which ultimately leads to a healthier lifestyle. And with a 30-day risk-free return policy, not to mention a 15-year warranty, I would highly recommend you try this desk out. Not to mention, when you go to purchase this desk, you can actually custom build it on their website. So you go down the list and you select all the features and sizes and colors and everything that you want so that you can match it to fit your specific needs. I've used other standing desks, but in my personal opinion, this is the best one by far. If you'd like to try this out and you want to get a discount while you're at it, I would recommend clicking the link down in the description, which will take you to their website and you'll get a discount on your first order. Okay, so let's assume that you're a very motivated individual, and that you want to improve your life with mental practice. Very practically, here are 3 guidelines that we need to stay inside of if we want to maintain and create the best possible outcome. Let's go ahead and run through this, and then after that, we'll take an example of something that you want to learn or get better at, plug it in, and see what it looks like day to day. Mental practice must be highly focused, intentional practice. This kind of goes without saying, but daydreaming doesn't really count. Mental training is not passive, which means that there needs to be specific time, dedicated time set aside for it. And what's really, really interesting is oftentimes when you're doing mental training, you'll experience like this kind of frustration or agitation. And that's actually good because those feelings are happening because your brain is changing and learning. Mental training must be in combination with real life similar practice. While mental practice and visualization is awesome, it needs to be combined with real world practice. Kind of obvious, but still. It goes kind of like this. Mental practice is better than no practice. Real world practice is better than just mental practice. And real world practice combined with mental practice is when you really start to accelerate the process. And this is so important. Please get this. If you're going to mentally train or practice something, you have to be able to do it in the real world. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, but you need to have some level of proficiency already at this task. And it makes sense, right? Because you're teaching your brain what to do and what not to do. So if you've never done it like correctly before, you won't be able to practice it mentally, really, because you don't know if that's actually the correct way of doing it. You have to know what it feels like to do it correctly, even if you do it like very, very slowly. How many reps? And this is where the research gets really, really specific because we're gonna try to shoot for 3 to 4 times a week if possible, but obviously doing it once is better than 0, right? And each time you run through this mental practice, the entire visualization process should only last about 15 to 20 seconds, and it should be kept pretty sparse. The research shows that if you overload the visualization with a lot of details, it actually hampers the brain's ability to learn from that practice. And then after that, we're gonna take about a 15 to 20 second break or just like a reset. Next, we're gonna do about 50 repetitions of that 15 to 20 second visualization or mental practice. And then we go through the process again. Okay, this is kind of hard to follow. So let's get an example of something we're actually trying to learn and what this looks like in shoe leather. For myself, I love to play volleyball. And one of the things that I'm trying to work on right now is improving the consistency of my spikes. So that's what I'll be using as my example. Feel free to plug in whatever you're trying to learn. So in addition to my normal weekly practice, I will be adding 3 mental practice sessions. Each session will look like this. I can mentally run through about 1 spike in about 10 seconds. So I can actually fit 2 sections of me mentally spiking inside of my head inside of that 20-second window. And then after that, I will reset and do it again. So that's 1 out of 50. I clear my head for about 15 seconds and then I do it again. 2 out of 50. As for the visualization process, it's actually pretty easy, right? So you just think of a time when you got the perfect hit, the perfect swing, the correct pronunciation of agarrar, or you rolled the R's just right, whatever it is. So you remember what that was like and what that felt like, sounded like, looked like, whatever, and then you just run through it over and over and over as perfectly as you can. And that's it. And you'll find that when you actually start to do this and use this consistently, that you'll notice that the skill you're practicing will come a little bit more naturally and there will be less resistance to it. And that's because you've added an additional exercise to teach your brain what not to do. And if you enjoyed this video, you'll probably also enjoy this video in the center of the screen, which also has to do in finding ways to improve our lives.